recently, Sean Hannity felt the need to compare Donald Trump to someone who's been in the news a lot recently, someone who lost his life because of brutality and our incredibly broken system. Take a look at what he had to say.
For years, we on this program investigated FISA abuse, premeditated fraud, prosecutorial misconduct, unlawful government spying. We were right. We exposed how corrupt, high-ranking law enforcement officials tried to rig an election and destroy Donald Trump at all costs, to overturn an election. Even the president himself, it's not the same thing as what happened to George Floyd, but it's horrific. He was a victim of crooked cops. Now, again, not the same circumstances. I'm not making any comparison. A bad cop is a bad cop. And by all means, by the way, the damage was real to the country. The damage in Minneapolis is real to the country.
He compared the most powerful man in the world, not just this country, to someone who was murdered in broad daylight by a cop. Mm-hmm. That was unbelievable. And like, he said that. He made that comment with a straight face. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump is not a victim, okay? I know that he would like to have us all believe that he's like, oh, poor Donald Trump. He's only the most powerful person in the world who has used that power to further enrich himself so he and his family can make millions and millions of dollars through, you know, constitutional violations like the Emoluments Clause. But, you know, he's the same as George Floyd. He's the same as George Floyd, who was murdered, who had no power, whose life meant nothing to Derek Chauvin or the three other cops who just stood by as George Floyd was suffocated to death in broad daylight on the street.
Yeah. And I already know that the right is going to respond by saying, hey, Anna, you said that he was comparing those things. And he said in the middle of it that he wasn't comparing those things. And we're just going to have to agree to disagree because it's not convincing.
The hell off. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, if you're like, later. Like George Floyd dying is bad. Also, I had a really unsatisfying meal. I'm not saying it's the same thing. He shouldn't have died, but I had a really bad meal. I'm not saying it's the same, but I had a really bad meal. It's bad that he died. I can't believe the meal. Okay, people are going to be a little bit confused because you're doing a multi-minute rant about how mean people have been to Trump, and you're interspersing a little bit about George Floyd, but you don't really seem nearly as fired up about that. So I think best case scenario, you're comparing those two things because it seems like you're not even really. You're way more angry about the fact that the FBI or whoever tried to stop an election or overturn an election. You can't really decide when it was because obviously they didn't do anything. Never really explained that part of the conspiracy theory that they got all this evidence and then didn't use it, but it was still a planned. The whole thing's really confusing. What I do get at the end of it, the only thing I'm sure of is that he is opportunistically pretending to care briefly about George Floyd, but he doesn't. It's not really bothering him at all.
And you know, what's incredible is like really dig deep and understand what Sean Hannity thinks is unfair and, you know, unacceptable. George Floyd, you know, allegedly, you know, the grocery store owner called the cops on George Floyd because he allegedly used a counterfeit bill, okay, to pay for whatever he was buying. There was no court date. There was no jury. There was never any type of justice. He never had a day in court. He was just murdered by the responding cop in broad daylight in front of the public in such a brazen and like nonchalant way, right? With Donald Trump, he broke the law several times, okay? He tried to get a foreign country to announce a sham investigation into his political rival so he can have the upper hand in the general election. That's breaking the law. Mm-hmm. He was investigated for, you know, what happened with Russia. And in the middle of that investigation, he obstructed justice, which is also breaking the law. He's defrauded students with Trump University, was found guilty of that and had to pay an insane settlement, $22 million, right before he was inaugurated. He paid hush money to porn stars that he cheated on his wife with in order to prevent them from coming out and speaking about the fact that he had done that, so it wouldn't hurt his chances of getting elected. I mean, he's a criminal. Donald Trump is a criminal through and through. And he still sits in the White House, well, right now in an underground bunker, pooping himself, right? As the most powerful person in the world. And Sean Hannity's comparing him to a man who was murdered by cops in broad daylight.
Yep.
Trash.
Absolutely.
It's really the only way to describe people like Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, and all those people who have enabled the injustice that we've seen in this country for years, for decades.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.